Welcome to High School Rewind's 2013 4A basketball preview show. I am Dusty Lister. Thanks for joining us. Pleased to be joined by Dane Stewart, Vince Francis working behind the camera and also editing this preview show. We're going to go through the 4A classification, talk about these teams a little bit more in depth, give you some players and some teams to look out for, and also predict a champion and maybe player of the year as well. Well, Dane, the 4A state championship last year created one of the better plays. It was shown on SportsCenter. Yep. Jalen Moore is the shot to win. The Skyview Bobcats make an improbable run through the tournament, cut down the nets, and take the championship home to Smithfield. Now, people need to know this. Springville didn't lose a region game for nearly half a decade and never won a state championship. Last year's team struggled into the playoffs and makes a run and then beats their rival in the championship in Mountain Crest and able to take the net home. That's what's more of the fun things. When you know the history of what took place, it's a little more fun to understand that.
Yeah, well, and that Skyview team, you know, they lost a lot of players. Jalen Moore right now, he's playing up at Utah State, and he's had a pretty good start to his freshman campaign. And so, you know, it's nice to see these kids move on, and you see that stellar. He had such a nice playoff run. You mentioned that half-court shot. Just what an improbable shot that was, able to drain it and see him move on and take his talents up elsewhere. And it's certainly fun. It was certainly a fun tournament. And basketball tournament, there's not much better than watching, 60 some odd games in 5 days. You just get to see so much different talent and then see these guys move on. And it's certainly setting up to be a great year this year with all the players that have moved on and the ones that are returning in the 4A classification.
Absolutely. So maybe we should call this the road to the Huntsman Center, as the 4A and 5A championships will be at the Huntsman Center. And a little note for you, so will we. We'll be at the Huntsman Center bringing you every game from the 4A and 5A tournament. It'll be a lot of fun to be there, but even more fun to watch the journey there for these teams. And 4A, Dane, the team that really was the odds-on favorite last year was Orem. Orem does return. So many of those players that won as sophomores, they all come back for their senior season looking to avenge a first-round exit by the Logan Grizzlies. But Orem had to be maybe the biggest shocker last year.
Yeah, it was. And really, you mentioned they lost to the Logan Grizzlies. That was a Logan team. They came out the number 4 seed in Region 5. Not a lot of pub about them. Yeah. It was kind of the best kept secret in Cache Valley. but I'll tell you, we covered a game late in that season against Roy, and they absolutely handled the Roy Royals. And Roy had a very good team last year. Yep. Chapman had a lot of guys around him, and they absolutely dominated that game. And Logan really came on strong. They found out who they were late in the season, prepared for the solid tournament run, had the big upset against Orem in the first round, and would go deep in that tournament. They lose some players, but you mentioned it, Orem, they won 2 years ago, lost last year with the first round upset, and this year it's, hey, we remember what that's like. Yeah. It's similar to East in football, right? They lost in the semifinal and had a little bit of the chip on the shoulder coming back this year. They weren't able to cash in for the state championship, but I think Orem's going to come back a little bit. Hey, we have unfinished business from last year that we're looking to take care of.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back, too. Yeah. Dalton Nixon, a lot falls on his shoulders. He's already sent his letter of intent to BYU to go play for Coach Dave Rose. Be interesting. So let's start from the bottom up. We'll start on the way far south end of Utah County. And I'll tell you, a team that started off pretty hot last night, made my Dinos look bad. Maple Mountain putting up 88 points on my Carbon Dinos. And that team looks to be, it'll be interesting to see what Maple Mountain's able to do this year. They started out strong last year. They really kind of tailed off at the end of the year ago. Yeah,
Polson, he's going to be big for Maple Mountain this year, just a sophomore. Yeah. But he had big minutes last year as a freshman and one of their leading scorers. He is back, and as you mentioned, looks to be on a pretty good start for Maple Mountain in that Region 8.
Yeah, and here's a question. Coach Perry Wildeboer no longer at Timpview. What's now going to happen with the Timpview T-Birds? What's that team going to look like? Yeah. They have a young man. It's a pretty decent athlete. We got to know pretty well in the fall. And Britton Covey, those of you who don't know that name, is going to be running the point for Timpview. He did last year. And it'll be interesting to see how Covey and the T-Birds really reload and how they come out this year.
Yeah, they do lose a couple players. Raymond is gone and a couple other guys that are no longer with Timpview. But, you just kind of get the feeling that program is stable. Now, you mentioned the coaching change, and it'll be interesting to see if anything shifts with that. But with some of the realignment that's occurred with Region 8, it's actually pretty favorable for Timpview this year, as Orem has left that region, so they no longer have to worry about Orem, and they get a little bit more favorable scheduling. There's still certainly good teams down there. Don't think I'm minimizing
the Wizard
Region
of Provo
8
is hanging out just down the road.
Yes, he is. But I think that Timpview, I think that they'll certainly be able to challenge for a region title.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Provo. Coach Drury won more state championships than anybody in the state of Utah. He's had a number of years of just so much talent. Brandon Davies, Chris and Kyle Collinsworth, so many more before McKelly Wesley, so many even before him. Is this a year Provo can bounce back?
You know, I don't know. They lose 4 of their top scorers from last year's team, and it wasn't a great team for Coach Drury down in Provo last season. So he's got a lot of holes that he needs to fill this year, and it'll be interesting to see. The one thing about Coach Drury, this man knows basketball. I mean, he can do a lot when he has a lot of talent. You remember, the Collinsworths who played there at Provo, and certainly went far with him there, but he knows basketball. He's going to tailor his team to what he has, and he will never be an easy W. I mean, that's what it is. Provo will be tough. Do they have enough to really contend for a region title? I don't know. We'll have to see as the season starts, but they are going to need some players to step up for him this year if they want to.
Absolutely. So let's move up to the next region. We talked about Orem ad nauseum. Orem should win this region championship. And that's not to minimize Olympus, which we'll get into. Coach Barnes, one of our absolute favorites, because they'll shoot from anywhere on the floor. It doesn't matter where they are. But Orem High should win this region. They have the most talent, probably top to bottom. Quinn Peters. Here's a name to remember. Quinn Peters is a kid that didn't get a lot of pub last year. You have the Holt kid who's very, very good as well. But Quinn Peters is kind of, to me, the X factor for Orem.
Yeah, and really it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you mentioned it's going to be interesting to see what their mindset is this season. Do they have that killer mentality that championship teams have? And I think the answer is going to be yes. Now, it is going to be interesting because they will have to face, the Olympus. I think Corner Canyon is actually going to have a good year this year. They pull some players that were good last year, and they're going to be first-year players for Corner Canyon. That's going to be a tough team. You may see a little more competition for Orem in this Region 7 this year. But that'll probably be better suited for them come playoff time. Exactly, because they're going to be a little more seasoned when it comes to win or die time. Absolutely.
So let's talk about Corner Canyon. Coach Tony Cannon, longtime coach, a state championship coach from Alta. He had re-enlisted into the National Guard or the Army, the military, and now his back is done and has done his thing and is back now coaching in Draper. This is going to be a lot of fun to see what Coach Cannon's able to do, because this is a guy that knows exactly what he's doing on the basketball court and how he's able to take this team. Can he duplicate what Coach Eck did on the football field on the hardwood?
Yeah, and he's got a pretty good young core. I mean, there were some players. One of the players comes to mind is Michael Ebling. I remember watching him last year for Alta. He's at Corner Canyon this year, and he's got some talent. This is a kid that you could build a team around. I mean, he's got some players down there that he can do some stuff with. And you talked about Coach Cannon, a very successful coach at Alta. This is a guy that took his team to quarterfinals, semifinals, and made nice runs. He's a very good basketball coach, very smart, and I think he's certainly going to have this team up and running before you know it.
And let's talk about Olympus. We know what they do. They shoot threes. They shoot them all day long. Coach Barnes doesn't put a leash on anybody. The Olympus Titans, they replaced one of the oldest floors in the state of Utah. Brand new floor they took out that ran horizontally. If you never saw it, the boards didn't run the length of the floor. They ran against it. And I'm a little disappointed. Now, hopefully they kept that. I don't know they did, but it would be a lot of fun to see Coach Barnes and what this team's going to look like this year.
I think they actually sold it off. I think you could buy old pieces of the floor, Dusty. So
I wish I would have known.
Go check that out. It is going to be fun. That being said, they had a team last year with multiple. I mean, they had height all across their starting 5. Certainly good shooters. They lose a lot of that this season. They do return a couple key players. Lindsay is back. That's going to be big for them. He'll probably lead them in scoring this year. Very, very talented player. Holler and Monson also come back, but they lose Jones. That's big. They lose Tally. He was big for them last year. But you mentioned Coach Barnes. This is a guy who he seems to reload. I mean, I don't know how he teaches shooting the 3 ball, but if you're interested in improving your 3-point shooting, move into Olympus Boundaries, because every year this is a team that shoots very well from beyond the arc. They've always got 2 or 3 kids who can do it, and that he's going to have that same thing going for him this year, even if you don't know exactly who it's going to be.
Is there a team we're missing in this region, Dane?
I think Mountain View could actually surprise a little bit in this region. I don't think that's an easy out for these teams. I think Mountain View could come into this region and pick up a playoff spot. I don't know that they're going to contend with the Orems of the world, but I think that they're competitive enough that they can get out of this region and make the playoffs.
All right, let's move up into our next region. Coach Keith West and the Highland Rams looking to make a run this year. Coach West won state championships at Highland. He's had a lot of talent go in and out of that program. It'll be very interesting to see what he's able to do this season.
It is, and speaking of talent going in and out of programs, he had a lot of talent go out. David Diver is gone, and for those of you who didn't watch Diver last year with the Highland Rams, I don't know if I have seen a more pesky player than David Diver, and I mean that with all the due respect in the world. This kid would get 3, 4, 5 steals a game. I mean, he lived picking pockets of opposing teams, and that's going to be a big loss for Highland. They do return Henry Morris, and Morris had a good year last year. He's a very tall, lengthy kid. He's a good shooter, and I think a lot of the offense this year for Highland is going to go through him. Look for him to really carry these Rams as they try to get that program back. This is a program that's been to state titles. They've won state championships. They've had the last couple years where they haven't really lived up to that. Expect Morris. He's going to have a big year if they want to get back to that type of play.
Now, the team that should walk into the state I did not give anything away. Region championship is Bountiful. Bountiful has 2 guys, if you don't know, Sam Merrill and Zach Celius. Thank you. I kept calling him Selhas. I want to apologize on air, but Celius going to go to BYU. This is a team that's got a lot of young talent, but also you have Parrish in the middle, who's very big. Coach Max has a very good team, and this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Jeff Pollard, he was an underclassman last year. He saw some playing time. Nate Pollard, his older brother, is gone. But Jeff, I think he runs about 6'10". I mean, he's got a lot of size down low. You mentioned, Celius, who is verbal to BYU, and Merrill, who is verbal to Utah State. And Sam Merrill, he may be the best bang for buck prospect coming out of the state this year. He has flown under the radar. I think he's going to be fantastic up in Cache Valley with Stu Morrill at Utah State. But this is a kid that can flat out score the ball. It can drive very well, has a good shot. Celius, I think, needs to be a little more selfish this year. If Bountiful wants to get over the hump and get to a state championship. I think he needs to be a little more selfish, take a little more shots. We saw him do that a little bit in the tournament last year. I think that's going to be key for them. But this is, you mentioned, this is the team that is favored in Region 6, and for every reason they've got players at every position and just outstanding talent across the board.
Should be a lot of fun to see where it goes there. Now let's go up to Region 5. Cache Valley, so the the state champions. Let's talk about the reigning state champions. They lose Jalen Moore, and that's a big loss.
Big loss.
And what can we expect from Skyview this year?
Well, I think Skyview, it's going to be time to look around and find who the next leader is. And I don't know what the answer is to that. You talked about losing Moore. They had a couple other kids that were very key on that team that they lost. I think it might be a tough year for the Bobcats this year. I don't know they'll get out of the region.
It'll be very interesting to see how they're able to go, because that is a lot of talent to lose. And remember, they didn't exactly run through the state last year. They got in the tournament and got hot.
Well, they were the 3 seed out of that region. I mean, so they, as you mentioned, they were not fantastic during the season. Kind of a good enough performance, got hot at the right time. But I think the bigger thing is all the talent that lives in that Region 5. When you start thinking of Roy and Logan, and you start thinking about some of these other teams up there who are bringing talent back rather than having talent leave their hallways, I think that's going to be the thing that they're going to really struggle with, is they lost that talent as opposed to bringing it back. Also,
we won't go too depth, but got to give a shout out to Carbon Dino and Grady Buckmiller, head coach at Mountain Crest. It's interesting to see what they do, because you had the state championship game was Region 5, and so hopefully Grady Buckmiller is a great basketball player at Carbon High School. Will get things righted there. But let's talk about Logan. And walk us through, Logan, what can we expect from the Grizzlies?
Well, I think Logan is going to be pretty well suited this year. I mean, they lost Larson. He was one of their better three-point shooters. They lost Falk down low, but they returned Brimhall. And Brimhall was really a young leader on that Logan team last year, and he was really key to their big run. Now, they got shooting hot at the right time, but this is a team that could certainly contend in Region 5 for a Region 5 championship. So much positive momentum coming out of the season last year and into the playoffs. So easy to build upon that for the Logan Grizzlies. I think they're going to be a tough out in Region 5.
And though you don't know, Roy has maybe the best. You said Merrill will be the best one to come out, but Beckett Chapman, there's some people that will differ with that.
Well, I said bang for your buck.
Okay.
So Celius is flying under the radar. Everybody knows about Beckett Chapman, and rightfully so. I mean, this kid is tall. He's athletic. He shoots free throws well. I think if he can establish a game in the block, if he can really get down on the blocks and out physical teams, this Roy team, the sky's the limit for them.
I'll tell you why I like Roy. neon yellow jerseys.
It's great, isn't it?
put-
Black and gold.
I'm all about it. Black and gold, and they go neon. I absolutely love it. Though you normally notice I wear neon shirts under all my stuff, so
Yeah,
it's just spectacular. We hope that Roy is able to make a big run, and this should be a lot of fun. This 4A tournament is going to be very interesting. Dane, who do you predict to be the 4A state champion?
Well, I told you before this that I had a little bit of a surprise, and you're probably not going to be surprised. I think a lot of people, at least for me, it seems like a lot of people are real positive on Bountiful this season. But when I look at it, when I think about it, I don't know if they're going to have enough to get over the hump. I believe the Orem Tigers are going to go back to the Huntsman Center, and they will not repeat, but they'll grab their second state championship in 3 years.
Wow, that's a terrific pick. Because I'm going to go with Bountiful. I think the Braves get over the hump. There's been so many years where Bountiful's had a lot of talent. For whatever reason, haven't been able to translate it into a championship. Yeah. And but I think this is that year. You have two guards in a sport that you can really just throw the ball inside, kick it back out, do your thing. I really expect Merrill and Sellius, because they are not diva-ish, that they will be able to share the basketball, and they should have enough to get over the hump. I don't think it's going to be easy. I wouldn't easily take Orem. I think that's a very, not to say easy pick, it's a good pick, but I think Bountiful will come away with the championship. And who would you select to be your 4A MVP then?
Well, I believe the 4A MVP this year probably going to be Breckett Chapman. I think if Roy has a good year this year, it's going to be on his shoulders. Now, they lost their opening game last night. He did not play in that ball game. But I believe if Roy's going to be as good as Roy can be, it's going to be on the shoulders of Breckett Chapman. And for all the fans of the U up on the hill, they're certainly hoping that season lives up to the hype, because he is committed to the University of Utah, and they're looking for him to come in and be a big player. But I think he certainly has the potential to lead the state in scoring, lead the classification in scoring, and really carry that Roy team as far as he can.
I have to agree with you. I think we can go Breckett Chapman, because I think he's been given an opportunity to score that many points. I think you're going to look at Bountiful. They're going to have to split the ball between Merrill and Sellius. Now, if you make a run and win a state championship, Merrill or Sellius become the MVP, but that's not our conversation here. I think it is going to be Chapman, because Chapman's going to be given an opportunity to score 25 points a ball game.
Well, he's going to have to. I mean, that's the thing, is last year he had a little more support around him. They graduated some of those players. Now he still has players around him to help him out, but I think he's going to have to shoulder a little more this year. And more importantly, I think he's got to kind of round out his game a little bit as well in order to really be able to do that.
Well, there you go. Breckett Chapman, both of us select him to be the 4 MVP, and then Dane takes Orem, I take Bountiful. And we will see you in March to see who was right. But we hope you've enjoyed our preview show of the 4A classification. The basketball season should be outstanding. We'll bring you 24 games a month here in High School Rewind. Nobody bringing you more games than us, and showing to you in sparkling high definition. And we hope you've enjoyed our preview show, and hope you enjoy our coverage throughout the year. For Vince Francis and Dane Stewart, I am Dusty Lister. Thanks for joining us on High School Rewind's 4A preview show, only on Xfinity On Demand.